Hey out there, rock and rollers, welcome to the 161st edition of the Ugly American Werewolf in London Rock Podcast, brought to you by me, your host, Mac B. the Wolf. And I will be joined, as always, by my partner in crime and co-host, Gary Action Jackson, from the East Coast of the United States of America. And 2023 was an amazing year here for us on The Wolf. A lot going on the show, a lot going on in the world, a lot going on in our lives. And we just want to say we appreciate you all for listening and sharing your passion for rock and roll with us. As we've said for a long time, these are conversations that we would be having together anyway. It's just now we hit record, we share them with the world. We've met a lot of new friends and helped build a community of people who love rock and roll music, want to know all the details, want to hear the stories while they're still out there. And today, in part 2 of our 2023 year in review, we're looking back not only on the great rock and roll shows that we covered on the podcast, like seeing Metallica kick off their amazing No Repeat Weekend tour in Amsterdam in April, and taking Jackson to see Iron Maiden for the first time, once in Amsterdam and then in Antwerp, and all the fun that ensued after the Antwerp show back at the hotel. And then the Wolf taking the Wolfcub to see Kiss one last time. But the people who make the rock and roll are the ones we might need to be most grateful for. You know, the folks who can create a song out of thin air. The inspiration hits them and they can make that rock and roll that we love. We're fortunate to have 8 different artists and legends on the show this year. Some people who we've admired since we were very young. Some people we just got to know this year but are now so psyched to know and to know more about their music. Talking legends like Reid and Jim McCarty of the Yardbirds, and finally tracked down Steve Kilbey of the Church, who I'd loved since high school. But also hear from some up-and-coming acts like Jimmy Maddon from the UK, and get to know some folks who are out there killing it every day, like Scott Holiday of the Rival Sons, put out 2 great albums this year, and Oliver Wakeman, who's so much fun to talk to. Most of our guests are so much older than we are, but Oliver's about our age, and we just had a great conversation with him on and off the record. And so we're going to share those stories here with you right now. First, just a little bit of business, though. As usual, we always like to mention we are proud members of the Pantheon Podcast Network of shows, a family of about 100 different shows, all music-related, not all rock and roll. There really is something in there for everyone. Check them out at pantheonpodcast.com or follow at PantheonPods. And thanks so much to our sponsor, rarevinyl.com. who helps bring resources to our show and helps record collectors and music lovers around the world get access to their over 250,000 items in stock, whether it's LPs or posters or CDs, singles, tour programs, ticket stubs, whatever you're looking for. They might just have it, and if you use the code UGLY, they give you 10% off. And they ship all around the world. And during the holiday season, we saw a huge uptake in orders, and we really, really appreciate that. It does help the show in a big way, and it just helps boost your record collection and gives you access to an amazing company that's been doing this for 40 years and has been connecting record collectors and music lovers with treasures for about 40 years. So do visit rarevinyl.com, use code UGLY, save yourself 10%. It's a real privilege to do this show and be able to hear music before it hits the streets and be able to see movies like King Crimson at 50 by Toby Amies, who was an amazing guest of ours. It's great to find that these folks love music the same way we do, and most of them love to talk about it too. So let's do our last show of 2023. It's 2023 in review part 2, talking to the artists, legends, and concerts that we covered right here on The Wolf. Doing this over 3 years now, Jackson, and man, it's cool the people we get to talk to now.
Yeah, it was one of those, you kind of had your fingers crossed, like, I don't know what this was going to be. But yeah, to think about the people that we have gotten to talk to, it's exciting. And just to get to kind of know them, not personally, but for a few minutes is really cool.
I mean, we've got questions. I mean, for some of these people, we would have had questions in the dorm room 30 years ago. And some of those we could get answered by stuff like Wikipedia now, but it's just cool to be able to take a little time to, sometimes it's a hero or a legend. Sometimes it's someone you've just learned about, but hey, they're a musician who's out there putting something new into the world, who has an appreciation of music like we do. It's just they can take that appreciation and turn it into something new and cool, So whether you're in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame or you're a solo act just trying to make it in the world here, we've really enjoyed who we got to talk to this year.
Yeah, the plus for them is they have appreciation and talent where we do not.
No, just appreciation.
Right.
We're like professional appreciators like John Cusack in High Fidelity.
Yeah. Hopefully not that hardcore, but that's fine.
Which should have been, look, I mean, it was written by an English author, and it should have been, it should have taken place in London instead of John adapting it for Chicago. And then, I mean, if it came out at the same time, although he is Scottish, I think Ewan McGregor would have done a great job of that role.
Oh, yeah.
Later, it would have been, James McAvoy would have been excellent in it as well.
Mm-hmm.
But, and just the whole thing about taking the train, taking the bus, which people do in Chicago all the time, but it's more of an English and certainly a London thing than it is an American thing overall.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, we digress. I want to tell everybody what our top 10 shows are, but I'm going to save that for the end. I think I want to go and talk about the 8 artists that we had on the show.
Okay.
And then we'll talk about the concert reviews that we did, which have gotten us a lot of attention.
Okay, so artists first, then concerts. Let's go.
That's right. And first up, back in March when we were on fire, we had a great March, and we took a bit of I won't call it a risk, but a stroll down a path that we weren't super familiar with to go over Marillion's
Script for a Jester's Tears.
There you go. Thank you.
Thank you. All right.
So early, I can't even remember the name of the damn album. But we had an English artist, a young man named Jimmy Maddon, who's out there putting out new albums and touring, and actually sounds like he's doing pretty well here in America as far as selling his tunes go, which is great. But it was great to have an Englishman talking about Marillion, because like you've said on previous shows here, didn't really know Marillion, right? I mean, as Americans, we didn't even really know the name. We never heard them on the radio growing up. We never saw them on MTV. And as we've said many times before, prog is a very English subgenre. And so Marillion may be huge over there, but not so much over here. So not only was it good to get to know this album that is hailed by many as one of their best, if not their best, it was great to hear an Englishman's perspective and someone who used that influence in making their own music.
Yeah, we definitely needed help on that one. Hadn't heard them before, and to hear it from somebody who kind of grew up with it, I think he said it was his dad who would play it on the hi-fi. He got an appreciation for it and then went on to become a musician. So yeah, that was kind of a twofer. Getting to know him a little bit, hearing about his recording process and how he makes music, and just a cool dude to talk to, and learning about a band who was pretty big. I mean, the only thing I'd ever heard of Marillion was the name. So that was a good show. I like that.
That was fun. And we actually got some feedback from our listeners to say, hey, you know what? Thanks for challenging us. It's easy to do a Van Halen album that all of us know front to back and by heart. But it was cool to learn something new and explore something that maybe they weren't. Right. It was like, thanks for challenging us. I'm like, well, we've got to challenge ourselves. That's all there is to it. We can't just say, we're going to listen to everything we know and that's it. Because we want to know everything. We just don't have the brain capacity to stuff it all in there. Don't have the hours in the day.
Yeah. And I mean, you're not going to like everything, but at least need to experience it to say, hey, I listened to it. I looked at it. I gave it a chance. Maybe I didn't love it, but I can speak semi-intelligently about it now.
Yeah. And I would say people should give Marillion a shot. Definitely.
Especially if you like especially if you like Genesis, if you like the Yes stuff I think it's a little more, at least that record was a little more, I don't want to say pop, but it had singles on it. But I think if you like that kind of music, you should definitely give those guys a shot.
Yeah, definitely. And keep your mind open. Especially like when we were in college, like if it was new, I probably automatically didn't like it because people our age are idiots and, I'd rather just listen to 70s rock. There's so much of it to go back and explore, but at least, now I could say if I don't like it, I don't like it for a reason, not just because, I just don't like that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great review.
Thanks for diving in there. Yeah. Way to give it your in-depth knowledge there. Yeah. But then next was in May. I call it one of the greatest opportunities that we've had on the show to get to know a newer band. Because let's face it, bud, I mean, if we're reviewing an album that's having its 30th anniversary, that's one of the newest albums we're going to review on this show. Right. Most of them are 40 or 50 years old or something like that. So when we had the opportunity to interview Scott Holiday for Rival Sons, the guitar player and co-songwriter, I'm like, well, you know what? That's cool. I don't know them that well, but I know the name. They're always on tour. They're always opening for big bands. If they're not doing their own headlining tour, they play a lot of festivals. And I know that they're hard rock. I mean, I think they opened for Black Sabbath for their entire farewell tour, like 13 months opening for Sabbath, opened for Van Halen, opened for Kiss, opened for all these folks. So I'm like, all right, well, let's have him on. Oh, he's got a new album coming out? Cool. All right, fine. What I think one of the coolest things about being able to do this show is people do send us stuff like new documentaries and new albums before they come out. We get them before the general public do. And that's awesome. But not everything always jibes. Like, okay, well, I'm sure it's fantastic Finnish death metal, but that's not really our thing here,
Yeah.
But when their publicist sent me Dark Fighter, I was like, oh man, this album kicks ass. We get to talk to the guy who wrote this. Hell yeah, bring him on, and so glad that we did.
Yeah, I kind of felt a little bit ashamed of myself there when we got this record because I should have been listening to it before. I should have been very familiar with Rival Sons. Fantastic album, great guy, and you're right. We got to talk to Carl Palmer, I think it was last year, about the Asia in Asia, and that was a great conversation. But that was a long time ago. So it was just memories. Now we get to talk to a guy who he's out there doing it now. It's new. It's fresh. Since that time, they've got another record out. But yeah, great guy to talk to. And I think that for 2024, we definitely have to make it our mission to see them play live somewhere.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, absolutely. And I got to do a few songs at the Louder Than Life festival here in Louisville, but that's like, they're down low on a festival. Yeah, I mean, they play like 5 or 6 songs. I'm like, well, that's not a whole set, man. So
right.
I gotta see them. There's no doubt about it. But no, their album Dark Fighter was so good, and then they had these cool videos too. And as children of the MTV generation, it's like most of the time these days people overlook the videos or they do some kind of
there's nowhere to play them. I mean,
that's right. Yeah.
So
there's no MTV. Yeah.
There isn't enough. And that's kind of one of the pillars of the show too, is it always added more to the video. I mean, to the song to watch the video. So to see their creative idea for this, because I think they all go together, right? It's like there's a common theme in there.
No, I mean, I would say it's a trilogy. Yeah. But the first single, Nobody Wants to Die, kind of had this Tarantino-esque kind of theme to it, where Jay, the lead singer, is kind of the preacher who had kind of screwed over his gang. He wasn't really a preacher, but he kind of screwed over his gang. And, then we had the Fuzz Lord and Mofo and, Miley, they're just coming after him. They're trying to track him down and they're running from the cops. And it's fun. It's like an adventure. And then, like Rapture and Bird in the Hand, those kind of tell the rest of the story in reverse order. So I'm like, these guys are great. Plus, Scott is cool. He loves rock and roll. He loves that 70s rock that we love. He is Mr. Fuzzlord, but he's also bringing some style to it. Unlike those grunge characters we had to deal with in the 90s when we were living together who looked like they were homeless, he's got those bespoke suits that he wears on stage. He's got the cool Raleigh fingers kind of mustache. He's always got his shades on. And I'm like, that's a rock and roll star right there. That's the real deal. And then, they made Lightbringer. I mean, I guess they were working on this stuff during COVID, and they put enough together to do 2 albums in 1 year. So Dark Fighter and Lightbringer, if you don't know them, check them out, pick them up for the holidays.
Yeah.
Love these guys. And I mean, look, it's like their 8th and 9th album. They're new, but they're not that new. They've been around 15 years, and they've been working hard, cranking out tunes and touring all over the world. So, I mean, if you're going to support, we always complain they don't make new rock and roll anymore. There's no new bands anymore. Well, they just don't get the support that they used to from the record companies, from radio, and from stuff like MTV. But rock fans need to know Rival Sons, and I'm so glad that we had Scott on.
Yeah, and hopefully, fingers crossed, we can get him back on to talk about Lightbringer, and maybe even get Jay on, too.
Yeah, and I hear Jay likes his whiskey, so kind of in whiskey country around here. Maybe we can bring him down and give him some tastes.
Hey, this is Scott Holiday from the Rival Sons. You're listening to the Ugly American Werewolf in London.
Oh, and then another opportunity came up to interview a legend, a true legend of rock and roll, and that's Terry Reid. And I mean, for those of you who don't know Terry Reid, I mean, huge in the 60s, really as a teenager. But he opened for the Stones in the 60s, and Cream, and Jethro Tull, and Fleetwood Mac. And of course, the very famous story was that he was offered the lead singer gig in Led Zeppelin by Jimmy Page, to which he said, nah, I kind of got my own thing going, but you should check out my buddy Robert Plant, and the rest is history. But then in the 70s, he made some great albums, and he's kind of continued to go to this day, and he's hooked up with some guys in New Jersey, of all places, called the Cosmic American Derelicts, and they're kind of main guy, George, I call him George K. I think his full name is Capitanellis, but it's a lot easier to say George K.
Yeah, it's a mouthful.
You know, the two of them came on to talk about their new album, Bergenfield Blues, which, again, we got to hear before anyone else did, you know, and just listen to Terry tell his stories and then having George kind of jump in with his stories about coming up in New Jersey and playing New York City, and the dichotomy of, you know, hearing this legend talk about doing stuff in England in the 60s and coming to America wide-eyed versus this Jersey guy who's hilarious and has been keeping this Cosmic American Derelicts going for 25 years and collaborating with a lot of people on his own. It's cool to see how they found each other, and now they don't just record and tour together, but they hang out. Like, Terry comes and stays with George, and it was just cool. Terry's a legend, got to know George, but the two of them together, the dichotomy, I thought was made for a fun interview.
Well, and I think that's part of the thing too that we talk about. People that have no connection to each other. I mean, they're born in different countries, different generations even, yet they can come together over their love of music. And it was two guys just hanging out on a couch, talking back and forth. I was a little disappointed because while we were talking to him, Terry was messing with that guitar. He was either restringing it, I think, or tuning it.
Was.
I'm like, oh, is he gonna play us something real quick? He didn't, but it was that moment for a second. Yeah, just to hear his stories. And yeah, wasn't there a story about I don't remember if we talked about this on the episode, but he was playing a gig. Chuck Berry was there. And Chuck Berry, hey man, yeah, how's it going? What kind of amp is that? I like that amp. And Terry's friends were like, do not let him use that. You're never going to get it back. Oh, but it's Chuck Berry, man. And of course, Chuck Berry played with it for his set, and he never saw it again. And so on one hand, you're mad because you lost an amp, but on the other hand, it's like, I guess you could say you gave Chuck Berry an amp. That's a cool story.
Or Chuck Berry swiped my amp. Yeah, that's a pretty good story.
But yeah, I think he was at Madison Square Garden when he was like 17 years old, and that's
opening for Cream or something like that.
Yeah, just it's crazy to hear that. Like, I was not anywhere even close to being a professional musician at 17, much less in a different country, much less opening for a giant band.
Exactly, crazy, and real part of the tradition of English greatness, because they started early over there. It's like in America, they want you to go to school and all that. In England, like, if you can do something as a teenager, go do it professionally as quick as you can. Yeah.
Dude, we could probably talk to you for hours and hours and hours on end, because I'm sure he's got story after story after story, and just a really cool friendship that the two of them had also.
Yeah.
I'm George Capitanellis. This is my good brother, Terry Reid.
Right.
And you're listening to The Ugly American Werewolf in London.
Right.
All right. Well, we'll move on from there.
Mm-hmm.
And look, being in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, I know for those who get in, it's an honor. And for a lot who don't, or people who think should be in and they keep not getting in, a lot of them kind of tend to blow it off like it doesn't really mean anything. And it doesn't. It's very hard to score art. I mean, it's easy to score, sports. It's like, okay, well, you have more touchdown passes than anybody else. You go in the Hall of Fame. You won 4 Super Bowls. You go in the Hall of Fame. It's different when you're talking about art, and what appeals to some people don't to others. And if the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame were based in England, it would have a very different makeup than it currently does. That said, it's always been our endeavor to get Rock and Roll Hall of Famers on the show. And in 2022, we got Steve Hackett of Genesis on the show. And this year, we once again had another member of the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame on. That's Jim McCarty of the Yardbirds. And I don't know, sitting in our dorm room 30 years ago, if someone told me, hey, you two would have a radio show and you'd have a member of the Yardbirds on it one day, we'd have lost our minds.
Yes. Especially thinking back at when we got the invite to do that, I was thinking about when we got our hands on that Jeff Beck box set. I don't remember what the name of it was, but it was cool. It was all black. And yeah, just listening to those songs, it kind of getting to know the Yardbirds a little bit better through that. But yeah, getting to talk to him, that's kind of like that direct connection to those bands that we love from the 60s. It was a cool guy. He had a cool story about his, kind of his journey through life and where it's taken him and just the different things that he got to do. That was awesome.
Man, it was killer. I mean, and he was happy to talk about Eric. He was happy to talk about Jeff and Jimmy and Keith Relf and like all these amazing folks who he'd worked with over the years. And, was talking about his new single, that he had out, and, his album that came out a few years back, Walking in the Wild Land, and talking about his wife who'd passed away and how he'd become more spiritual and trying to communicate with her in the afterlife and stuff like that. So just a great, very nice man. And I mean, it was an honor, honest to God, to have him on the show. His new single, Breath of the Wind, was great. It came out in September. And so you guys should check it out, and you can download it pretty much everywhere. But honestly, most people know the Yardbirds. They know them for all their guitar players coming in and out. But the band was tight. I mean, in going from like a blues act to more of a psychedelic pop act, you couldn't do that if there wasn't a lot of talent in the band. And then if you have a chance to check out like Renaissance, which is a band he was in with Keith after the Yardbirds, which is a little proggy, I think you'd like that as well.
Yeah, and unfortunately, the Yardbirds, I think they probably don't get the attention they deserve because they did not continue on as a band into the 70s and 80s like the Stones. But yeah, definitely go back, check them out. You will not be disappointed.
Nah, and he was a super guy, just so glad to talk to him. But having a member of the Yardbirds on, dream come true for decades.
Hi, this is Jim McCarty of the Yardbirds, and you're listening to the Ugly American Werewolf in London.
But this next guest may not have been a dream come true for you, but for me was a very big deal. May have actually even been the biggest deal of the year. Because, as I said on the show before, in the late 80s there, as I was getting into high school and stuff, I still liked hard rock, but I started to find that the pop stuff and the stuff that they play on MTV wasn't always going to be for me. It wasn't always going to be timeless. It was just going to be pop of the moment, right? So I had to go out and find music that was different, that wasn't from the normal quote-unquote channels. And I started exploring like college music and alternative rock music. And thanks to 120 Minutes on MTV, I started to find some bands that didn't show up in the top 40 charts. It didn't show up, on the kind of main run of MTV and on rock radio stations. And one of those bands that I got really into was The Church from Australia. Of course, they had a pretty big hit with Under the Milky Way back in 88, and their album Starfish, which contained Under the Milky Way and Reptile and Antenna and North and South and East and West, produced by my friend and yours, Keith Richards' buddy.
Waddy Waddell.
Waddy Wachtel. And yes, it was great. And so even though that was kind of their high point as far as sales go in the U.S., I followed them for years, and they've made 35, 36. Listen to the show. Even Steve doesn't know how many albums they made because they, are released in different territories, and then some aren't, and some are greatest hits, but then some are whatever. But I have more than 20 of them. So I've been trying to chase down Steve Kilbey for a while, and finally they made this new album, The Hypnagogue, and they had a couple different tours of the U.S. on it. And so we finally tracked him down, and he did not disappoint. He is quite the character.
Well, I knew how big of a deal this was to you. I mean, I'm a fan of the music, not anywhere close to like you were. So I knew this was a big deal. And then you mentioned something about how I think you'd met him one time at a meet and greet, and
right.
he comes off as, I believe you used the word curt in your
aloof.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so I'm thinking, I don't want to have this guy just, hey, so how do you like the new record? It's fine. So I was a little nervous. Could not have been a nicer guy. It was a great conversation. Just a guy who's been in the business for a million years, doesn't need to be there anymore, but still wants to be out there, still wants to write new music. And I got to go see them in Jacksonville, and yeah, they played the hits, but I was really there to see the new stuff. It's a really good album. I really enjoy listening to that. And the way that the Hypnagogue is a story.
Yes.
All of the tracks go together. So when he's on stage, they play a couple, and then they'll go into the back catalog, and then he kind of gets in and says, okay, now we're going back to the story, and we're at this point in it now. And it was a great night. Cool guy. And the thing that I was most excited about was how excited he was when we pitched maybe coming back to talk about his concert memories.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And yeah, like you, I got to see him live up near Cincinnati. 2.5 hours at 70 almost years old.
Yeah.
It's pretty impressive.
But 2 hours plus, that's a mighty feat. And mine was like I don't know, yours was like a Friday night or something.
Yeah, I don't even really remember. Yeah, I think it was
close to the
night,
weekend. Mine was like a Tuesday. So it was a school night, but everybody showed up. They put on a great show. And I was definitely impressed with both him and the band.
Yeah, no, I mean, the Church are great, and his stage banter is kind of fun. I mean, yes, sometimes he's explaining the story of the Hypnagogue, which you kind of need to get into to better understand what they're singing about. But when he's talking about Unguarded Moment, it's like, okay, here's an old one. I don't really want to play it, but I'm playing it for you, so here it comes, you know. It's just funny, and the story he told.
Is that what he said?
It was something along those lines.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because when he played it for in Jacksonville, he said, "Here's a song that you love and I hate," and then they went into it.
So I'm not going to say how much I hate it and how I just play it for your sake. Seriously, I'm just playing it for your sake because you asked for it.
Why did you write
So without further ado, I don't want to cloud your preconceptions by any negative talk about my old boring old song. I just want you to enjoy it without any preconceptions. So here we go. Without further ado, this is it. Stand by.
That's so funny. And the thing is, it wasn't a big hit in America. It was huge in Australia, but it wasn't that big a hit over here. Yeah, because the story he told about being accosted backstage while he's changing out of his stage clothes is hilarious. It's about the best story we ever had on the show.
Yeah, and just that matter of fact where, the people are kicking down the door to get him to go back out there because I was, they had a implied promise that he was going to play that song. And that was a good kind of a side part of the conversation too. Like what does he owe you as an artist to a fan? What does he owe you? And yes, it was I'm sure it's a funny story now and we had a good time talking to him, but in the moment, you don't know who these people are, what they want, and why they're so upset.
I know. You're sitting there in your underwear. Talk about an unguarded moment, man. Oh my God. But it's like, have you seen Eurovision? When the guy comes to Will Ferrell, it's like, play Ya Ya Ding Dong.
Yeah, that's
that's exactly what it was.
Get back in there right now and play Ya Ya Ding Dong.
No, we are done for tonight.
You have to play it.
Why do I have to play it?
I only want to hear Ya Ya Ding Dong.
Well, all the best to Steve, and hey, keep making that music, man. We'll keep checking it out. Now, our next guest was very special. So cool. Oliver Wakeman, who obviously is a brilliant keyboard player. Most people know his father better, Rick, grumpy old Rick Wakeman, who was in Yes in the 70s and 90s. But I did see Oliver play with Yes it was 2011, I think it was. And it was kind of during a time when Asia had been opening for Yes. So Steve Howe was kind of doing double duty in both Asia and Yes. And what's cool about Oliver, besides the fact that he's a brilliant musician, is that he's basically our age. Most of the people we have on who are musicians are much older than us, like Steve Kilbey, like Terry Reid, like Jim McCarty. But Oliver's, like, age-wise, a contemporary of ours. So he grew up a fan of Yes music. It's just he had a little more access to it than we did. And all in all, we had him on to talk about John Wetton and the brilliant box set An Extraordinary Life, which I'm pretty confident Santa's going to bring me this year. But we also got to talk to him about his time in Yes and talking with Chris, Chris Squire, and maybe a little bit about his dad. But just the way he revealed how John Wetton had befriended him was so cool. And because he's like us, he's like, grow up kind of worshiping this guy, but now you're kind of his peer. You're working together, you're touring together. And the guy didn't say, okay, okay, yeah, that's Rick's kid. I used to work with his dad, whatever. I'm going to stick to my guys. No, he went out of his way to befriend him and check him out and make sure he was cool. And the way Oliver told the story was fantastic.
And the fact too that we had him officially, was it a half an hour or was it a whole hour?
We booked him. His publicist was clear. You get 30 minutes.
Okay, so we had him for 30 minutes, trying to respect his time. But when he says to us, hey, are we okay going over? Yeah, if you want to still be talking, we can do that. No problem. It's a great conversation. I thought it was really cool that he has no connection professionally with that John Wetton box set, but yet he wanted to come on and talk about it and promote it and talk about his relationship with John. And you're right, they genuinely seemed like they were friends. It seemed like John really took an interest in him as a person. He said he gave him some career advice, was very kind to him during the whole, when he was not a member of Yes. So it was great to hear that story. As we've said a million times, and we'll say it a million times more, we love John Wetton, and to hear a story about what a great guy, or hear another story about what a great guy he was, that was a special conversation.
Yeah, exactly. Specifically, they added some dates where they had to go play in Mexico, so they extended Oliver's time in Yes. Mm-hmm. But Oliver was going to be replaced by Jeff Towns because they're going to kind of bring back the drama lineup because they're going to have Trevor come back for a bit and do some stuff. And so that's an awkward situation because Jeff's in Asia and he's opening, and in a month, Jeff's going to take your job. And so John, who is beholden to Jeff, they are songwriting partners, in Asia and Icon for decades. It'd be easier for them to say, all right, kid, well, you had your time. I'm backing my boy here who, we wrote Heat of the Moment together. No, he went over, hey, man, are you okay? That's a top man. That's a real friend.
Right. Yeah. Just another example of what a great guy he was. And Oliver, too, was somebody who we pitched the idea of the first concert memories. And, oh, yeah, I'd love to talk about that. So hopefully we can get him back on as well.
Yeah, because he was fun. Look, he was a fan like us. He's like, look, I've got the Asia Dragon poster, framed in my house. I'm like, oh, yeah, you mean this one? I showed it to mine, that I bought from Roger Dean in the office, and we were booked for half an hour. He gave us an hour and a half at from 9 to 10:30 at night.
Yeah.
At some point we were just talking about music and talking about stuff that we loved as people of the same generation. And then the fact that he got to play Heat of the Moment live with John at one point, it's the one time they got to perform together. They shared stages, but it was Asia first and then Yes later. Whereas, this was one time with his band that John actually jumped up and played some songs with him. Honestly, I was on cloud nine after that interview. I was like, gosh, this is fun, man.
And when he casually mentions the fact that he's got, I've got every poster from every tour that Yes
every
did.
T-shirt from Yes.
Every T-shirt. Yeah, they're in
Anderson, Bruford, Wakeman, and Howe. I'm like, oh, no
Wait,
way,
what?
dude.
So that was cool because he played in the band. Yes, he's Rick's son, but he seems like he was really genuinely a fan of the band and loved all those guys and the music. And yeah, I would love to see his personal collection of that stuff.
Absolutely.
Hi, this is Oliver Wakeman, and you're listening to the Ugly American Werewolf in London.
Now, here's a little segue for you.
Mm-hmm.
He told a great story about when he was leaving his dad's place on the Isle of Man, going back to London with his mom, and Rick gave him a tape. He's like, hey, now listen to this. I love this, and I want you to love it as well. And it was King Crimson's In the Court of the Crimson King.
Mm-hmm.
And our final artist that we had on the show this year was Toby Amies, the director of a killer documentary, In the Court of the Crimson King, King Crimson at 50. Easy for me to say. But besides the fact that it's cool that I had been seeing advertisements about this thing for years. I remember living in England and seeing, the trailers or whatever. I must have seen it 3 or 4 years ago. It's like, oh God, when can I see this? I've got to see this because I love a good rock and roll band documentary. And it's just, God, it's never coming out. When are we going to see it? When we finally said, hey, we've got an opportunity for you to see it and then maybe have some of the band members on or perhaps the director. I'm like, give me the director because that's his medium.
Mm-hmm.
And Toby couldn't have been cooler. A guy who worked on MTV in America and in Europe, was on the radio with Jimmy Kimmel, worked at radio stations, helped start TRL, and then became a director and came into this, I don't know how you describe Robert Fripp. Mercurial?
Yeah. Okay.
Maybe?
Mm-hmm.
That's at least one way.
Right.
Prickly?
Mm-hmm.
Standoffish, incredibly talented, perfectionist.
Definitely a perfectionist. Definitely someone who is never satisfied with how he can play or what he can play, always wanting to get better. The movie, it took a pretty hard left turn for me. I thought it was going to be about the making of the record and its impact. And it was about the band, mostly the most current iteration of it.
Right.
They had a little bit about a couple of past members, but yeah, fascinating movie. Had some, not only about Fripp, but the other guys in the band too, who they were, how they got there, their love of playing music, but also playing the King Crimson music. And they get into the relationship between the fans and the band.
Right.
And it's even if you aren't really super familiar with King Crimson, you can watch this movie and be entertained.
For
you
sure.
did a great job.
Yeah. And then not only does it have all the current members of the band, but any surviving past members of the band, he got interviews with them, whether it's Ian McDonald or it's Bill Bruford or it's Adrian Belew, who provides some interesting insight. It wasn't always hunky-dory, and I guess since he's left, there may be, I don't know if bitterness is the right word, but a little strife, let's call it. And that always makes for entertaining TV or movie, however you want to look at it. But Toby's a talented guy. His other movie, The Man Whose Mind Exploded, is an interesting character study as well. And I think he's found after bouncing around and doing different things in music, I think he may have really found his true calling.
Yeah. I can't imagine that was an easy thing to make, only because you could have made Fripp the bad guy very, very easily.
Yeah.
And just, that's the deal. But there's a lot more to it than just that. And I think he really kind of gets into the personality of everyone and how it works together to make the band still run today.
And the guy's insane, Robert Fripp. I mean, he still practices 5 hours a day.
Yeah.
5 hours every day. Do you think Ace Frehley's practiced 5 hours this year? I don't think he has.
Yeah, probably not.
But Fripp is 5 hours every single day, and he mixes up the set list every night. They got 50 years plus of music to choose from. It's not like, okay, here's the set list for this tour. No, every night it's different. It's whatever he decides they're going to play that night.
See, now I'm imagining Robert Fripp yelling at Ace Frehley on the stage. Can you even play the guitar? Oh, take it easy, Curly. I'll get there. Don't worry about it.
Hey, what are you worried about, man? I've been playing guitar my whole life.
Hi, this is Toby Amies, the director of the rock and roll documentary In the Court of the Crimson King, King Crimson at 50, and you are listening to the Ugly American Werewolf in London.
But those were our guests, the artists and legends that we got to interview this year, and so proud to have them on. It really was our honor and our pleasure, and got to make some new friends and learn about some new music. I mean, honestly, we do it to keep rock and roll alive, but we do it because we want to hear these stories, right? We don't have stories of our own other than I went to the show and it was great, and then afterwards we got loaded, but to hear it from the people who make it, we want to capture this. We want to get as much of that on the record as we can.
Yeah, and I'm kind of thinking about that now too. Like they do it to make money, right? That's how you support yourself, and it's a job. But most people don't have a reverence for their job like this, and I think that's the really cool part. Is the people that we talk to, they enjoy doing it, but I think they're first and foremost they're fans, and that comes through in their passion for what they do.
Yeah, and while Scott Holiday and Oliver Wakeman and Jimmy Maddon, they're going to be around for a while here. At least we hope so. I mean, Terry's in his mid-70s. Jim McCarty's 80 years old. Steve Kilbey even said, look, and he's getting really close to 70s. Like, I can't imagine being like in my mid-70s still doing this, So let's capture all this while we can, and get it on the record, and so that the future generations will come to understand why we love this music and what motivated them to make it.
Although with Terry McCarty, I think he could probably still take me.
Terry McCarty.
Now I'm Terry Reid. I'm sorry. Wow, I got whoa. That was a hey now.
It's early on the East Coast here, folks.
It really is. We got to get the brain warmed up this morning. Hey now.
Who could still take you?
Terry Reid.
He can still take you?
I think so. I think he's one of those guys that, look at, there's a older gentleman over there. And then all of a sudden he's wailing you if you talk to him the wrong way or something. He looks like somebody who's he's a good guy, but I wouldn't mess with him.
Yeah, it's probably this. I mean, Jim McCarty couldn't be nicer, but those drummers have strength. They got those hand speed that we don't. You say something cross, he could pop you really and just catch you real fast. I guess
that's the thing too. Is you figure that there are bands that we reviewed Leonard Skinner and they were always looking for a fight, but there are people that are known for that. But you got to figure if you played rock and roll, especially back then, you couldn't. If you were a softer, gentler spirit, you probably weren't going to make it.
Yeah, but I mean, Charlie Watts, sweet man, gentle guy.
Mm-hmm.
But if Mick pissed him off, and he could clock him. He's got faster hands than Mick does. So, don't mess with the drummers, man. Their hands are faster than you, and they're strong.
Hi, this is Steve Kilbey from the church, and you're listening to the Ugly American Werewolf in London.
All right. Well, those are our legends and guests. Now let's get to our concert reviews, which were big for us. Epic shows, and they did very well for us as far as performance and downloads go. But first, I want to talk about a couple of shows that we didn't do concert reviews for. We did mention the church that we both went to in separate cities. Mm-hmm. Great show. But having Steve Kilbey on the interview, I think that kind of covered it. I took my daughter to some softer rock shows to indoctrinate her into rock and roll, to see bands that she likes, but I didn't think they necessarily met the criteria for doing a review on the show. Mm-hmm. And I'm talking about Peter Frampton and Chicago and America. And America, the guys in America had a great line. It's like, we almost called the tour Music from the 70s played by guys in their 70s. Which is, it could be for like all those bands, right? And they were all fun. They were all good in their own way. It's just, I didn't think it kind of met the criteria for this show. But there was one that I wish had been a little bit bigger, and we would have done it on the show. And that's when I saw Noel Gallagher and his High Flying Birds in Cincinnati.
Okay.
Because in England, they'll play arenas.
Mm-hmm.
And they'll headline, obviously. And over here, they were doing a co-headline tour with Garbage.
Oh,
and
right.
So sometimes they open and sometimes Garbage opens.
Mm-hmm.
And because it was in Cincinnati, I was actually hoping that Noel would open so I could get home a little bit earlier. But it was a little bit rainy. Plus, Taylor Swift was playing where the Cincinnati Bengals play that night. So there's 70,000 people at that show. I don't know if there were 7,000 people at the show I was at. And he did close, and he played certainly new stuff, but he also he reworked some old Oasis stuff or brought some stuff back that you hadn't heard in a while. And I was in the second row. I paid up to get up close to him, and the videos that we have on YouTube are the ones that have performed best this year for us on our channel. That's for sure. Him messing with the crowd.
When I'm there, because if you're going to be there shouting that fucking loud, I'm not going to bother going. I want an answer. Are you going to be there? Then I'm not going. Is he your dad? Is he really fucking annoying on a day-to-day thing? Is he really fucking... From every time he's getting on your fucking nerves, just say, Dad, your fucking weapon, shut it. There, you fucking like, yeah.
But I would have liked to have seen the whole set, not just an hour and 10 minutes or whatever, right? Mm-hmm. It would have been great to see his whole set. And in England, I mean, he's booking big shows, arena shows right now in England. So he's still a huge deal.
Mm.
And, and then when it comes to the whole Oasis thing, it's like, well, they'll probably get back together one day because eventually everybody does.
Right.
But they can play arenas.
He can play
solo
arenas by
now.
himself. Yeah.
He'll probably play stadiums when Oasis get back together in most of the world.
Yeah.
Wouldn't play stadiums in America. Maybe he could go back to amphitheaters or arenas with Oasis, maybe in the U.S., but around the world, he's a much bigger deal. And I just wish I could have given our listeners and myself the opportunity to see and hear about the whole headline show.
Yeah, I wonder. It will probably happen someday. I mean, like you said, everybody gets back together. I mean, the Police got back together.
Yeah.
When they said that they would never happen again. I mean, the Eagles did.
The Eagles got back together.
Yeah.
And then they stayed together. Yeah.
Yeah. Famously hated each other for a long time. It would not surprise me And I don't even want to know what that would look like. I mean, we're talking about like they would sell out like Wembley Stadium, probably multiple
times.
nights.
Yeah. All around Europe, all around South America, in Australia, in Japan, they'd sell out stadiums.
Did you watch Ted Lasso?
Oh, sure.
Where they go to Wembley and he's like, and this is where Freddie Mercury stood right here and played Live Aid. No, that was the old Wembley. I didn't know that, but okay, close enough.
That's true. That's when I took the Wolfcub to see the Who in Wembley with an orchestra. I'm like, this is Wembley. You know, this is where they play Live Aid. This is where Led Zeppelin used to play. This is really they played it here. I'm like, okay, well, it was the grounds. They had to destroy it and rebuild it. But yes, it's Wembley.
Technically, yes. I mean, that's the same thing as Giant Stadium. I mean,
right.
Yeah, not the same thing, but it's the same place. It's the same idea. You get it. Be quiet.
Yes, exactly. Pipe down, will you?
Yeah.
All right.
Close enough here.
Well, speaking of stadium tours, as some of our listeners may know, I was living in Amsterdam earlier this year. Thought I was going to live there for a couple years. It ended up being much shorter than that. But I got tickets to some pretty big shows in Amsterdam. And some I couldn't go to because we moved away. So I had to sell my Roger Waters tickets, and I had to sell my Peter Gabriel tickets, and I had to sell my Kiss tickets. But I kept the tickets to see Metallica doing their, no repeat weekend, 2 nights at a stadium, never play the same song twice. And of course I had to keep the Iron Maiden tickets. So because I invited you over and you're like, I already got my plane ticket, man. The whole family's coming over. So we're keeping those. I'm like, yeah, okay, no problem. But first let's go to April to Metallica. Now, this is an 18-month world tour. They played in Europe in the spring and early summer, and then they came to America and did some dates. And they're going to do the same thing next year, but they basically sold out stadiums around the world for 18 months, and Amsterdam was the kickoff. No one knew what the stage was going to look like. No one knew what the set lists were going to look like. And it's cool because they have 2 opening acts each night, different each night, and their stage set is amazing. So I'm like, you know what, I'm going. And I went back, and I'm so glad that I did. And we recorded the first night, I feel like, in between.
Yeah, you were still there.
Yeah.
That was a great. I wish I was closer because I would have loved to have gone to that one with you also. But yeah, because we didn't have any idea. That was the first 2 shows. Nobody had seen the set list. Nobody had seen the stage, what it looked like.
Right.
So yeah, you got in on the ground floor, and then it was cool to talk to the hosts of the Metallica podcast,
Steph and Renee.
Yeah, Steph and Renee, to kind of get their take on it too. And you had that connection with like, yeah, I mean, not only did I see it, I had to see it from the beginning.
That's right. That's at Johan Cruyff Stadium, where Ajax, basically the New York Yankees of the Eredivisie, or the big Dutch football division, play. And yeah, I mean, and the first night was amazing. Although Kirk's sound was off that night, they fixed it by the second night. I was bummed that I missed Wolfgang Van Halen, but it looks like I'm going to get to see him next year, so I'm psyched about that. And it was fun to see the camaraderie there, because you come back the second night and it's all the same people all around you, right? So I mean, you make friends the first night, and then you come back, it's like seeing your family.
Right. I don't know why you would get involved with this and not go 2 nights, because that's what it's designed for. But I don't think this has ever happened before that I can remember about it. I understand there are acts that do more than 1 night in the same venue if you're that big, but it's never designed like that with 2 different set lists for they're setting it up so you would want to go both nights.
Yeah, I mean, maybe Fish does something like that. Who the hell likes Fish, dude?
No,
I mean, the Dead might have done that a lot back in the day, but people are so wasted they don't even know the difference. But to see Metallica come out with this enormous stage
and a great new record too.
Well, that's the other thing. I think maybe we'd heard Lux Eterna when I bought the tickets, but we hadn't heard the record. It wasn't out yet. So we're like, well, God, what if the new record kind of sucks? You never know. You never know with Latter Day, and it's the best album they've made in 30 years. It's actually really damn good, and the new ones fit in great with the classics, and the yellow theme and the lights that they did with, and Lars had like 3 or 4 drum kits, so he could be on all the different pieces of stage, yellow, with the yellow lights and the yellow towers for those songs. It came off so well. And so for people who saw it this year, great. But I know a lot of people are holding tickets for next year. Hang on to those because it's a hell of a show.
Yeah. Yeah, it looks great. I know they did a simulcast too. So Dallas, I think. So people that couldn't get to them, because I mean they only play big places. They're not coming everywhere. And so I was looking at the dates and I'm like, wait, that doesn't this year. I'm like, well, wait a minute, that doesn't make any sense. Oh wait, that's 2024. So they already had this thing booked for multiple years.
That's right, which is pretty impressive. I mean, unless you're Taylor Swift, who else can even do that?
And I think they were neck and neck with her for a while for a number of people to cram in what was it, SoFi Stadium in Los Angeles.
Oh yeah.
I mean, a band who is, I mean, what do we do? Kill 'Em All was 40 this year.
40 years old, yeah.
Still selling out multiple nights in arenas all over the world with a brand new record is extremely impressive.
Killer, man. Absolutely killer.
I'm happy that y'all came here to celebrate heavy music with your friends at Metallica. Because we are Metallica, and so are you. You know that.
Now, there's another band that's been around more than 40 years who can sell tickets a year in advance. One who you had never seen live before this year.
Right.
But we got into them together in college. So we had a personal connection between you and me for this band. But as soon as tickets went on sale, I may have known I was going to move. I may not have known I was going to move. But did I know?
No, you did not know.
Okay.
You didn't, because that was the whole thing. So you got the tickets, and I said, well, I've got to do this now, because there's a little more to this story than just that. We had tickets in 2000 and what was it, 17? Before you moved to London.
Yeah, maybe in 2019 or something like that.
You had tickets for Cincinnati. Said, okay, we're gonna go. Here we go. Boom, boom. We're gonna make a whole weekend out of it. Oh wait, no, I've got to move out of the country. Sorry, can't do it. Okay. So now we fast forward, we've got the tickets now, and you're like, oh, wait, I've got to move back. No, we're not doing this. We're not doing this again. We're going to make this happen.
That's right. Of course, the band is Iron Maiden. One of the greatest live acts in the history of mankind. And of course, we had heard their single Writing on the Wall with the coolest video I've seen in a long time, at least when it first came out.
Yeah.
And they have this new album, Senjutsu, which had kind of come around, the pandemic-ish, but we're finally going to get to see them do some songs off Senjutsu. But the theme of the tour was
the Future Past tour. So it was half the new stuff and then half from Somewhere in Time,
which is our favorite Iron Maiden album, I would say.
Which also never got, the only thing we'd ever seen from that was the 2.5-3 minute, what was it, Stranger in a Strange Land
video
from back in the day. Other than that, there was no record easily available of that tour.
Well, and then the Wasted Years video was them in the studio, right? So,
correct. Yeah.
So they didn't, because they had just blown out big on the Live After Death video, they decided not to film the next year. Right. I think Rod looks at it as an oversight, but at the time you didn't film every single tour back then, right?
I mean, there was no cell phone cameras. There was no anything like that. So yeah, I mean, I'm sure that was a fairly large cash outlay. And you're right. We just did this.
Yeah.
Why would we do it again?
Exactly. Maybe in a couple of years we'll do it. And they did Made in England in 88 when they, which is basically the Seventh Son video.
Right.
So, I mean, okay, so there's not one of that one. So what? Not everybody has filmed, but now it's like every single one is filmed, right? At some point you're going to have a DVD of it or whatever. So we never seen it. So to be able to see this stuff live and, well, to see him in Amsterdam and Antwerp, it's like, well, do you really want to see him 2 nights later? Yes. Absolutely. And which night was better for you?
Definitely the second night. Definitely. And I think it was a couple of different things. Number one, I had never seen them play live before. So it was kind of like an overload there. And I mean, honestly, no offense to anybody in the great city of Amsterdam, but the crowd was a little reserved that night. The Ziggo Dome was nice.
A little more modern.
Everything. Yeah, a little more modern. We get to Antwerp. I mean, this looks like a bombed out, just a place left over from the 70s. The crowd is definitely more electric. And that second show, it just had more energy. I think the set was exactly the same.
Yeah.
But you could really tell that the band got more into it too. They fed off the crowd's energy.
Straight from Antwerp!
They did. And Bruce was on his game that night. And
yeah,
it was just a lot of fun. And then when we realized we couldn't get the train home easily, we said, okay, well, let's just walk. We can walk a couple miles through Antwerp. It's not
Sounds
a big
like a great
deal.
idea.
We can find places to take a clandestine piss, where we won't get arrested. Not worried about that. We'll just go to the hotel bar and have a couple drinks.
Correct. By ourselves.
Yeah, just quiet. Maybe we'll see some other fans there. Didn't know half of the band would be there.
Definitely a surreal moment. Surreal moment when I'm walking through the hall trying to find a restroom, half in the bag, just not really, kind of annoyed now at the whole situation because I'm in the wrong part of the hotel. And here comes Steve Harris around the...
Oh, my God.
Yeah, what? And it was that moment of like, okay, you've always wanted this, like, you've thought about this in your mind, like, well, what happened if this can't be real? Can it? No, he's really standing right there. And, kind of that, we were talking to Christy about finding Jimmy Page.
Yeah.
Where she had the whole moment of he's getting away. You have about a half a second now.
Got to do something.
Got to do something. And I just said, Steve, and you could tell, like, he kind of winced for a minute, like, oh, what is this going to be?
Not another one.
Yeah, exactly. I'm just trying to, he was kind of trucking it. I don't know whether he was getting something to eat, picking something up, but I just stuck my hand out and just said, hey, thanks so much. That was a great show. You guys kicked ass tonight. And he just oh, yeah, thanks. Cheers, mate. That, like, I don't want to sit here and tell you that, I've named 3 of my kids after you and anything like that. Just quick, but just to thank him and just to have that moment for a second. And I thought, well, it can't get any better than that until it did.
Yeah, I know. So we met this nice family who had like a teenage daughter, Amelia was her name. And we met them like checking in or whatever. And the father was a guitar player in his own right. And I think they went to that huge thing out in California the
Power Trip.
Yeah, Power Trip thing.
Yeah.
But we came back and we bumped into him again. And it was, oh man, that was so great. That was so much fun. And Amelia's like, Bruce. I'm like, yeah, Bruce is great. Yeah. He was on tonight, honey. He's like, no, Bruce is right there at the bar, And I'm like, oh my God, it is Bruce. You got to be kidding me, And so he was across from us. So I sat there looking at Bruce do his thing. It must have been an hour that he sat there.
Yeah.
And then Adrian was sitting to our left having some wine with his family. He must have been there an hour and a half, maybe longer.
Just relaxing. Yeah, just kind of coming down from that. I just couldn't believe there weren't more people at the bar. I mean, I guess as Americans, we were used to maybe staying up later, but there was nobody else there. So yeah, very surreal moment of, it was the 2 of us, 2 other guys. We were kind of just reminiscing about the show.
Yeah.
And then Bruce and his wife,
yeah.
And then Adrian and I guess members of his family or something. He had 4 or 5 people with him, and that was it. At the bar.
That's it. Plus the bartender. Yeah, that's it.
Right.
That's it, and I'm like, God, this is unbelievable. So, I mean, look, just seeing the shows, because they were brilliant. And we later found out that Nico had a bit of a stroke earlier in the year. And I guess when we had Uncle Steve on the show to talk about those, he had heard reports that Nico was not doing great. And there was this one point in Amsterdam, I think it was in Amsterdam, where Steve went back and he's basically right in front of him showing like, this is the pace. This is where we are right now.
Yeah.
And it looked like Nico was not his usual happy self. Like he was really struggling to
concentrating
keep up.
On what he was doing.
Well, now we know why. Good Lord.
Yeah. So, I mean, to imagine that, like you have a health scare like that, but you're that much of a professional that you're going to say, no, I can do this. I can be back on tour. Obviously a guy who enjoys doing that also. Cause I mean, at this point in time, he could just say, get somebody else, but he's not going to do that.
Yeah, I know. And look, for the most part, when your drummer's age starts with a 7, you have to replace him. It's, it's not whether or not he's a good guy. It's no one can physically do this for 2 hours anymore. Nobody can. But, even after a stroke, he's hanging in there. So God bless him. And God, I'm glad we went because, they're touring here in America in 2024. But A, it's nowhere near us. And B, the American crowd's not like the European crowd.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's why part of it was like, oh man, I'm going all the way over to Europe to see these shows. But yeah, you telling me about how you've seen them in America, and it's
It's okay.
Okay. Yeah. No, I wanted to see fans, and yeah, the fans were out, old, young. You could tell there were people.
Women. There's a lot of women at the European shows.
Yeah. And families that went, and it did not, and that was part of the thing too. Like when we went into the Ziggo Dome, like, oh, you've hyped this up for so long. Is this really going to live up to it? All my expectations? And it did. They sounded great. The set list was awesome. The new songs sounded great. Like Metallica, here they are putting out a new record that you actually want to listen to the tracks they play, not like time for a beer because they're playing the new one that I don't care about.
Right.
Awesome. Yeah, the shows were the same. The one thing that I liked about Bruce's banter back and forth was it wasn't exactly the same thing, because that would have been annoying if he said, like he's coming up with these stories, but no, because they're all pre-rehearsed. It was different. He did work the crowd. He kind of got engaged with them.
Are you from Amsterdam? Where are you from then? You're from, I'm going to be politically incorrect here, you're from Holland, aren't you? I'm supposed to call it something else, aren't they? The nether regions or something.
Awesome shows.
Totally awesome. Totally amazing. Now, as far as families going to see rock and roll show together, I'm all for that. I think it's the great way to pay it forward and to keep rock alive for the next generation. So for our last concert review of the year, I did take the Wolfcub to see Kiss in Cincinnati on the End of the Road tour. She had seen them on the same tour when she was 4. She had seen them when she was 5, but she's a little young for that, couldn't make it through the whole show. So I'm like, okay, she's 9 now. I know she can make it. She'll have real memories from this. We were going to go see them in Indy, which was the Saturday after Thanksgiving. And then we were talking to Sonny Pooney when we were recording First Concert Memories 4 on Ace Frehley. And he's like, no, I don't see Kiss anymore. They're coming 20 minutes or 10 minutes from my house. And I go, I'm like, ooh, they're coming to Cincinnati? Let me just see, because that's an easier trip than Indy. And then if we end up going someplace for Thanksgiving, I wouldn't be beholden to driving up to Indy that night. And I'm glad we did. So we went up to Cincinnati, got great seats, not totally priced out of the sky. Sold the Indy ones. And she did enjoy it. She had fun. She got to pick out a Kiss poster, which I'm in the middle of getting framed. By the way, framing is expensive as hell. Framing that thing cost about the same as the 2 tickets of the poster itself.
And I love too when they're like, oh, there's a 50% off coupon. Oh, okay, cool. And it's still $300. Okay. How did this happen?
It's ridiculous. But it's a memento for her that she's going to love. She got to see Star Child fly out within like 30 feet of her. So she was pretty psyched about that. But she's funny because she's like, Daddy, no one in my class has even heard of Kiss. Can you believe that? They don't even know Kiss. They don't even know The Who. I'm like, no, I know,
it's
honey.
Your job. It's your job to educate them.
And I feel like it's my job to indoctrinate her as best I can. So that's what I've been doing. And look, here's the thing. The first time I saw them on this tour, I'm like, this is tired. Paul's stage banter is the same.
So, I want to stay out. Can I stay out here for a little while?
Tommy's guitar stuff is the same as Ace's was 25 years ago when they got back together. It's a little tired. But on this night, it was more of a celebration. It's like, you know what? This is it. You don't get this anymore. And the stage was amazing. The lights, the stuff they had was unbelievable. It's a spectacle that you don't see from other bands anymore. I was really happy to be there, honestly. And even when he starts going his stage banter, I'm like, okay, yeah, I know what's coming next. It's okay. It was fun. It was a celebration. If you don't have fun at a Kiss show, it's your fault.
Right. And I'm sure to see it through her eyes too. Like you said, she's a little bit older now. She's had more time to absorb the music, and also, the attention span is a little more to think about how, this is how I felt as a kid experiencing this. I mean, obviously we didn't get to go see them live in the 70s or 80s,
right?
But to see it through her eyes and really kind of realize, I mean, you always kind of have that thought of, is this really going to be the last thing, or are you just telling me this to sell tickets? This is it. They're not doing anything ever again.
Yeah, that's right. And definitely check it out. Shout It Out Loudcast review of the last 2 shows in Madison Square Garden, because that was a great show.
Hey, this is Tom and Zeus from Shout It Out Loudcast.
And you are listening to the Ugly American Werewolf in London Rock Podcast.
All right, before we let Jackson go back to being a citizen, we got to give out our top 10 shows for the year.
Okay.
This is for downloads overall, so this isn't quality. This isn't our favorites. This is as they rank by the number of downloads worldwide across every platform. And obviously some of this is skewed. I mean, it's for the year, right? So if something came out in November, even if it's doing well, it hasn't had the time to number up the downloads as something that maybe came out in March or the spring or something like that. But for the year, number 10 on the list was number 132. Yes, the Tormato Story by Kevin Mulrine, a killer book. And Kevin has the Yes Music podcast, which he's been doing for 12 years. That came out June 8th, and thanks to our Prague fans and Kevin lending a little support there, it cruises into the top 10. Number 9 was number 128, Metallica Live in Amsterdam Night 2 review, which came out May 11th. So you know that if Night 2 did that well, you're probably going to see Night 1 somewhere higher up on the list.
Okay.
And you'd be right about that assumption, by the way. Number 8 was number 125, Dire Straits' 1978 debut album. Yeah, it just seemed like in March and April, May, we were on a good run there, and people were really digging what we were doing. And when we did Alchemy way back when, that was like the 12th show or something we did, it has been like our number one reviewed and almost most downloaded show. Like it's good for 1 or 2 a day all over the world. And so I think being able to put this in there, and it was a great record. I mean, for a debut, it's killer.
Yeah.
That did very well for us. Number 7 was number 141, The Rolling Stones' Goat's Head Soup at 50 with Mark from Performance Anxiety. That was a fun conversation. And the fact of the matter is we have 8 or 9 Rolling Stone shows. So we can kind of bundle them together on social media. It's like, hey, here's our new one, and check out our catalog, if you will, of shows. So that performed very well for us. August, I think that was the latest one, August 10th, to make the top 10, and it's 7th. Number 6 was number 124, Van Halen, OU812, hitting 35.
One we actually got to record together live in person, so that was cool as well.
That's right. We were in Florida together, and we got to sit right next to each other and record it. And yeah, it did better than Dire Straits did, also from April. Now we're in the top 5. Number 5 is show number 139, Iron Maiden live in Amsterdam and Antwerp with Uncle Steve from Uncle Steve's Iron Maiden Zone. Not a big surprise that this did well because, again, they didn't really play America. They did that one show in Indio, but they didn't really play America this tour. So being able to get over there and get some perspective on what this live show, what this year's tour is all about, I think got us a little boost there. That came out July 27th. Number 4 was First Concert Memories number 1, our new spin-off sidecast monthly show about going to see bands for the first time. That was about Kiss with Tom and Zeus from the Shout It Out Loudcast. Those guys were...
If you're going to talk Kiss, there's only 2 people you want to
Yeah, that's right. And we've been fortunate as far as the folks we've had on our First Concert Memories, as far as best in class. Those guys doing Kiss, Greg Renoff doing Van Halen, Def Lep Pod doing Def Leppard, killer. And it was always fun to talk to those guys and to get them on, talk about their first time before now we get to hear them talk about the last time they see Kiss live. That was a lot of fun. Just edging that out for now. This could change by December 31st, but just a few ticks ahead of that was number 130, our interview with Scott Holiday of Rival Sons.
Okay.
Which came out May 25th. So, I mean, now look, yeah, I mean, if the Kiss freaks get out there and download a lot more First Concert Memories 1, that could be number 3. But as we're recording this, Rival Sons Scott Holiday was there, and that's awesome for a band that we didn't know that well, but they're out there touring their asses off. They're making new music, killer new music. If we could turn anybody on to that, then that's awesome. Then that's what the show is all about. Number 2, the second top 5 for this band, show number 121, Iron Maiden, Peace of Mind at 40. Again, we have about 8 Iron Maiden shows, so I could bundle them up when we did Peace of Mind on March 23rd, and bundle them up again when we did live in Europe July 27th. So the Iron Maiden fans came out for us this year, and we appreciate it. They hit the top 5 twice. And then number 1, as you might have guessed, released May 4th, episode number 127, Metallica live in Amsterdam, night 1.
The kickoff to the entire tour.
That's right. It was before anybody in America had had the chance to see it. They wanted to see what the set list was about. They wanted to see what it looked like, what the setup was. And I was just really glad to be there. And I kind of wish I had still lived there at the time, but being able to go back because I know my way around and I know how to take the train and take the bus, and I got a hotel that I like to stay at there, and I know where to top off my cards and stuff like that. It was a fun weekend. It's tough though, just going to Amsterdam for like 72 hours or whatever it was.
That's a quick turnaround, but I'm glad that you stuck with that, because you could have gotten top dollar for those tickets, but then we would have missed out on excellent reporting.
Well, exactly. We'd have to wait till maybe next year to see them someplace in America.
Right.
So that's it. So that's our show. All the artists and legends, all the concerts reviewed, our top 10 shows. Heck of a year, moving from Amsterdam back to America and seeing the show grow. It's been a lot of fun, Jackson.
Yeah. Another. I can't believe another year has gone past. It seems like it flies by. Talking about the shows from the year, I'm like, well, yeah, I kind of, not that I forget about them, but they kind of, it's nice to go back and relive what we did. Looking forward to 2024, and I can't thank people enough for checking the show out and kind of coming with us on this journey.
No, it's so much fun to make friends and connect with people all around the world who love the music that we do, who like to see us talking about different things. Maybe they're not everybody's favorite. Maybe we go down some different rabbit holes that you're unfamiliar with. It's okay. And the response that we've gotten to First Concert Memories, our new sidecast that comes out the first of every month or thereabouts, has been overwhelming. And you saw that the first one made our top 5. We really appreciate it. We got great, and we've got some great stuff lined up for 2024. Not only for the weekly Ugly American Werewolf in London show, but for the First Concert Memories, we're going to have a lot more great conversations in 2024.
Looking forward to it.
Hey, this is Scott Holiday from the Rival Sons.
I'm George Capitalis. This is my good brother, Terry Reid.
Right.
Hi, this is Jim McCarty of the Yardbirds.
Hi, this is Oliver Wakeman.
Hi, this is Toby Ames, the director of the rock and roll documentary In the Court of the Crimson King.
Hi, this is Steve Kilbey from the church, and you're listening to the Ugly American Werewolf in London.
What a great year here on The Wolf. What fun we had, man, going to shows in Europe together. Gary's first Iron Maiden shows ever, hanging out with the band a bit, being on the first 2 nights of this amazing Metallica tour in Amsterdam, where I used to live. Many days I wish I still did, but it is good to be back in America. I think next year we'll go see some more shows. Those are big stadium and arena shows, and maybe we'll mix it up, more theater shows. But the guests we had on, the artists and legends that we had on, are amazing. I mean, dream come true for us to be able to talk to Jim McCarty of the Yardbirds and to talk to legends like Terry Reid and like Steve Kilbey of the church. Just so awesome. And to be able to meet an up-and-coming artist like Jimmy Maddon, get him to talk to us about prog, and talk to some people who are in their prime, like Scott Holiday of the Rival Sons, and like Oliver Wakeman, people who we're going to be seeing for decades to come. And we feel very blessed and honored that you choose to spend a little time with us this year. We really can't thank you enough for listening to the show, interacting with us, letting us know who you want to hear about, the bands, the albums, the books, the concerts, whatever it is. We love being part of this rock and roll community and the community we're helping to build about the stuff that we're passionate about. So thank you to everyone for listening. Thank you to all of our amazing guests. Thank you to Pantheon Pods for making us a part of the family. Thank you to our sponsor, RareVinyl.com, who's helping record collectors and music lovers everywhere build their collections and save them money through code UGLY, which will save you 10%. Thank you to Jackson. Thank you to everyone out there who loves rock and roll music. We got some great stuff on the menu in 2024. So use this time to take a little rest, maybe party a little, whatever you need to get ready for the new year. It's going to be a great one. So to all you rockers all around the world, be cool and keep doing what you do to keep rock alive.